All right, so welcome to class 5. We're going to start a new lab series. We're going to make a mobile app mock-up. Um, so yeah, should be fun. So in order to do that, that's going to include sort of interactivity and people interfacing with using stuff. So we're going to talk about usability, which is the main thing they talk about when they talk about user interfaces, general user interfaces, graphical user interfaces, user experience. Most of those are focused on usability, and this is the definition. So it's basically about how well someone can interact with a product or a or software, generally speaking. So usability can apply to both. Like you could make a hammer, and is the hammer someone pick up that hammer, understand how to use that hammer, and then use that hammer efficiently with as little with as much efficiency and as little troubleshooting as possible. You want to make it as easy to use and to not for them to not have any struggle. That's the goal. It's not honestly even possible, but that's what you're trying to do. So for our purposes, being if you're doing web design or interactive design, mobile design, those elements, usability is very important because you want people to open up your software and then be able to use the software without having to go through and make tutorials. I'm sure you probably have noticed. I know I do this constantly. If you open up an app, a lot of times they'll have like a little tutorial section. I just go skip and I just go right to it, which people won't do those. So you have to make sure that your stuff doesn't require that as much as possible. All right. So you can kind of think about it like this. You have a starting point, you have a finishing point. You want to make it like this, that you can just go straight from start to finish, that it's not this big hassle to go through. So usability, this will sometimes change the what they consider like the main elements of it. I will see sometimes they'll have more, sometimes I've seen less. Sometimes they'll have some and they kind of mean the same thing, but they use a different word. So just be aware. You can do your own research on this as well if you would like, but these are the general kind of categories. So first off, is it intuitive? Is it easy to understand? Um, can someone just look at it and understand it in a sense, right? So is it learnable? How quickly can they operate the basic tasks? Okay, so is it easy to acquire the information you need in order to fulfill the tasks at hand? All right. Memorable. How memorable is it? That actually is twofold, because on one is, if they've already done the task once before, you want them to know that they can do the task again. So any learning that they had to do, they won't have to do the second time, right? Which just makes it more efficient. You also want them to have an experience that they remember. You want them to remember where they got that from, because that's important, obviously, to have users come back. Error tolerance. So how often are there mistakes? How bad are the mistakes? Like, are they very, or do they just make the whole thing crash, and that's obviously very bad? Or is it merely that, oh, they have to like go back to the home page and now they can get to that page because this one link doesn't work? That would also be kind of a bad one, but it wouldn't be as bad. Generally, people are willing to deal with a little bit of error, more than you probably would think, but there is obviously a threshold that goes beyond, and then it's no longer usable. Efficient, right? So that's pretty obvious. You want them to be able to complete the tasks as quickly as possible, to get them, in and out as best as you can. And enjoyable. So basically, how was the experience? Would the people be satisfied with the experience? Do they enjoy the experience? Which kind of goes with the memorable aspect as well. Main thing is make it easy. That's if you really want to get all the way down to it, you want to make it as easy as possible. There's a thing where every time they have to think of something, it adds to their cognitive workload, meaning that every time you get stuck on something, what'll happen is you'll get a little bit of frustration, and then you might overcome that obstacle. Then if you get stuck on something else, you get a little bit more frustration, and you get stuck on something else, and you get a little bit more frustration. If those occur at a regular rate or become more and more difficult, it might get to the point where they will no longer want to do that, or they'll become so distracted by it that they won't even, they won't be able to complete the tasks at hand. So a good example that really annoys me, I don't know if you ever see, sometimes they'll have this I'll see some things will have like a button and it says like exit or back, and I'm always like, well, I don't know which one I want, like, because it seems like they're kind of the same thing. You know what I mean? So so you don't want to make it something where they have to think about it. It should be obvious what it does, and then they would just be able to push that, specific button to make that happen. Scanners. One thing you're going to realize is that people don't read. I've noticed that, like, I'll read Yahoo articles now and then, and instead of people don't read articles. So what they do at the beginning of the article, and some people, I think old people get frustrated with this. They have the bullet points of what's in the article right at the top. Like, it'll have like 3 or 4 bullet points saying all the main points of the article, and then they'll have the article underneath, because people are just scanning for basically keywords that they're looking for. If you're looking for information on something, you will look for that word, just like when you're using a search engine. You'll look for that word in the text, and then you'll gravitate towards it. So just be aware that people aren't going to read every line. So you're kind of wasted by adding large bodies of text, because they're not going to read them anyway. So you want to make it as brief and precise as possible. Okay. Yeah. So when you're building stuff, obviously make it built for scanners. Utilize conventions, things that people already understand. So, like when you're on a phone and stuff, there's certain icons that people already know what they do. If you're going to scroll, use scrolling in a way that makes sense, like up and down. Don't make it scroll left and right. People, or you know what I mean? That's not standard. Try to use things that have already been established that people understand, because they don't have to learn something new. Don't reinvent the wheel, because it's not beneficial in the long run. Productive visual hierarchies. So we've talked about, I think, visual hierarchies before, but the idea is that, you have your top level elements, then the next and the next. So, this has more weight than this body of text, and this has more weight than this body, right? And these images have more weight than that. You want to create a hierarchy that people can say, okay, look at this, now look at this, now look at this, and you'll work your way down. So you'll have the main points with more emphasis placed on them, and then subsequently more information buried underneath that. Break pages up into chunks. People consume in chunks. When they think of things, they try to, just like how we write paragraphs, right? We write paragraphs that should all be about the same, the same subject, and then the next paragraph would be about another subject. So you need to make sure that you do that as well. It's particularly poignant, I think, today, because a lot of times we're using mobile devices, so you can't. They're usually you have to be able to scroll through the information. So it's good to have it kind of chunked and to have it, let it breathe and what have you. Remove anything distracting, make it clear. So don't add anything extra that doesn't give you any extra information. Format content for scanning, so use bullet points, things like that. Highlight words. You can even do things where, I'm sure you've seen this before, where they'll pull a quote out and then they use like their accent font, or they'll use an accent color, and then they pull that out, because that's generally going to be something that's going to entice the person and that they'll read it. That will help draw the viewer. Conventions. So yeah, like I said before, you want to make sure that you use them as much as possible, because they're basically a shortcut. It'll be something easier for them to understand. A great example of convention is the primary menu. Most, probably 95%, might even be higher than that, of websites, for instance, the menu's in the top. It's a top horizontal menu. Is that exciting or sexy? Not necessarily, but it's something that everybody understands, because your primary goal, you want to make things visually interesting, but your primary goal is to make things usable. They will understand that if they scroll all the way to the top, there should be a menu, some sort of way of navigating from one area to another. So you want to utilize those same basic things, like the hamburger menu, right? I don't know if I have one on here. I don't really have one, but it's like the 3 little lines. That's a convention that people understand. How elements function. Make sure people use the same forms and search bars and things like that people already are using. Iconography, I already kind of mentioned that. Just use standard visual representations. People understand certain icons mean certain things. Use those icons where you can. So let's say you want them, they can pay with PayPal. Use a PayPal icon, like the official one. Don't make your own, because that won't, for one, it won't look trustworthy, but also they won't necessarily know what that means. So if there's an icon that already represents something, use the icon that's already being kind of distributed publicly. All right. So UI and UX design. So sometimes there's a little bit of confusion with these. At the most basic, the UI means user interface, and it deals more with the graphics of what you're working with and how people are interacting with those graphics. The user experience is more of a holistic approach. That you're talking about how like the whole experience of them, utilizing whatever it is that you're having them use, right? So if you were designing, let's say, um, uh, this what do you call it, the a slide, right? You always see little kids on slides and you're supposed to go up here and go down here. Well, you might notice that after you do some UX research, that kids start going up the slide instead, which is really stupid because obviously then kids are going down the slide and they get hit, and it's a common thing. I remember when I worked at Fisher Price, there was a girl who worked in, I forget what the department was called, but basically trying to make toys safe. And she was having a problem because she couldn't get kids to stop putting buckets on their heads. Because they kept putting the bucket, like there was a bucket for something, I don't know, some toy or something. But the kids were just constantly putting the buckets on their head, and that's obviously not safe. So she's trying to figure out how to make them not do that. So that would be more of a user experience sort of, thing. App design. So app design obviously just refers to the creation of the graphical and use of interactive components of an app for a mobile device or otherwise. There's a lot of, like a lot of other industries, be it web design to some degree, but definitely like game design, um, other sorts of interactive design. You're going to typically find that there's two types of people. There's the programming side, and then there is the graphic side. And because those are so disparate skill sets, it's very difficult to have someone that can really kind of do both, at least do both well. So if you want to make an app, it's very difficult because you basically, if you're a graphics person, you're going to need a programmer. And if you're a programmer person, you're going to need a graphics person. So it's hard if you're somebody that is, your area is in usability design, right? Or graphic design. You don't really have a way of you don't have a way of kind of saying, hey, this is what it should look like, this is how it should function, because you need the programming person. But there is software out there that allows you to basically mock that up, and that's when we get to Adobe XD. So basically, it's a UI UX design solution. It allows you to create kind of interfaces that you can click on buttons, and they will navigate you to other pages. But it's more as a mock-up tool. It's not meant for final export. Um, it's very user friendly in comparison to anything else that you probably have used. It's not going to be at all difficult, and it's fun. The general designs work pretty well. It's got a nice interface, and you can use it for all sorts of different. I mean, the most obvious is if you're trying to make apps, but you could use it to lay out web designs or interfaces for video games, anything like that. Mostly the way it works is it allows you to do page layout in a very clean, simple manner, kind of like InDesign does, but with fewer options, I would say. But it also has these interactive components that you can make it that when you click certain things, they'll do certain things. But even that's sort of limited. It's more just to get the idea of how it should appear, and how things are connected. There's another option. So in the future, if you guys are doing other things in the world, there's also Figma, which is actually free. You can click on this and that will bring you there. It works very similarly to XD. We're going to do XD in here just because you guys already have the Adobe Suite available to you through the school. And you're more likely, probably people would be using this, but Figma is not a bad option either. So in the future, if you don't want to pay the subscription fees for Adobe, feel free to try out Figma. I don't really have any experience in it, to be honest, but it looks pretty cool. So maybe check that out. For now, what we're going to do for this lab, you're actually going to create a design using Photoshop. Okay. You could also do an Illustrator. I'm actually okay with Illustrator as well, but I'm gonna have a video on how to create just a basic layout. But I'm gonna use Photoshop just because I feel like For the most of you, that's probably going to be the easiest way to work. But it should work in Illustrator. I think InDesign works as well. But what we can do is you can actually make your design in Photoshop, and then you can just import them directly into XD. So we're not going to be using XD this week. You might want to install it this week just so you're ready to use it for next week. But instead, what we're going to do is we're just going to work in Photoshop, or like I said, if you're feeling super comfortable in Illustrator or maybe InDesign, I'm not sure. I got to double check on that. But you can use those as well. All right. Yeah, so that's it. So after that, we're just going to talk about the this here, but I'll have a video below it to describe what the lab's going to be.